Welcome. Super elated and very enthused. Today's going to be a different day. I'm here by way of Tampa, Florida, and I'm Ruth, and I have here co-hosting with me Trisetta. And go ahead and click and share. We're going to start here in a few. And here's the truth: we went and dived in so deep on habits. We're going to stem on that, but oftentimes, again, you all talk about it. Yes, you all shared it in terms of what's sort of keeping you in a pigeonhole with moving forward in your career. What roadblocks to eliminate? Yes, as we're wrapping up 2022 and gearing up for 2023, we certainly want to make sure of that our mindset is definitely in alignment with what we're looking to pursue in our next chapter in career. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of transition right in there. And if you all have questions, let me know, and we could just, put them into the comments area. But let's go ahead and start. Is that okay with you, Trisetta?
I'm ready to go. Let's talk about it.
Yes. So I love the fact on our last call, we talked about what activities or actions we can go through when it comes to shifting certain habits, especially if you're knowing that you're in the right motion, you're doing the acts, but somehow there's some sort of wall or some sort of brick that's definitely preventing you from getting noticed, getting back into the applications where you're getting callbacks, or perhaps you're got the interview process and somehow it just goes crickets. There's no one calling you back to letting you know, hey, this is the next steps. So what ways, number one, let's walk away with what can we share to help them to build upon that, as far as what mistakes to avoid, and talking about habits, what new habits they can form and how.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make, especially when it comes to building appropriate habits, and this transcends just career habits, right? This is in our life in general as well, is we try to go too big when we are starting to create those new habits, right? We start thinking about, like, I want to completely transform this particular area of my life or my career or my business or my relationships. And so we set our sights too high. And now, listen, I am a dream big kind of gal. I am not trying to tell you to dumb down your dream, dumb down your vision. I'm not telling you that at all. What I'm talking about is if we would shift from trying to completely transform to how can I make incremental improvements to that area, then what happens is you get quick wins and you set yourself up for success.
Does that make sense? I like that. So, and here's a way to build upon those mini wins as well. So if you're already had a habit, let's just say you went on an application sprint and just started just applying. Let's kind of take it back a little bit on what form of habit you're wanting to create. And before that, just being number one, your goal. What is your goal anyway? What is your motive? What is your purpose of wanting to shift that needle in your business or in your career? Or just in your personal development? What are you trying to achieve? What are you wanting to pursue? Writing it down, making it super crispy clear as to what exactly, and it has to be a goal, not just a goal that you're able to obtain. I'm going somewhere with that. Let's say you already brought a car. It's like, okay, I already got my goal. I have my car. I've had it now for maybe 2-3 years. And then you write down your goal again, saying, I want the same car. Maybe that car was, for me, I love Cadillacs. I say Cadillacs. And then, but you already obtained a Cadillac. You just had it for 3 years. So now you want to stretch that muscle and give yourself permission to even challenge yourself. How is that challenging when you know how to get a Cadillac? You know what it took you to get it. So maybe extending that, in other words, when it comes to your habits, if you're wanting to form it, what does that look like to you? That's something that you know you can achieve, but it's going to be like, I think I'm going to have to do some more outside of the box to making sure that it connects, versus being familiar with doing something over and over again and then getting zero to little results. What would you recommend, Trisetta? to kind of shift that condition to where now I see it as an opportunity. That's something I've never done, but I'm curious to go ahead and doing it. Even if it's maybe going from an analyst role to a manager role, or perhaps running a team of 30 plus people because you think that you have the ability, but just never done it. Now that's a goal.
Yeah. Yes. So I really want to play on, you were talking about applying to, doing a barrage of applications in one time and not really getting any callbacks, and just really, I want to kind of use that as an example to kind of unpack how you can shift your habits in a way that serves you so that you aren't sabotaging the advancement of your career.
Right.
Right. So if the only thing you're doing to advance your career is to apply, just kind of do a barrage of applications or an application here and there without the intentionality, and you're not seeing the results, then you have to take a look at the process. This is one of the things that I really work with my clients on. When you set your goal and you're taking action and you're not seeing the results that you desire, then you have to take a look at the process and say, what is it about this process that isn't working? How can I tweak it? How can I enhance it so that I get better results? So maybe you maybe you're need to be more focused in the types of roles you're applying for, or maybe you are stretching a little too far out of where you currently are, and the leap is a little bit too big. So maybe you scale back and say, okay, well, instead of going for this executive role, I'm going to go for a mid-manager role or a team leader, like one step above where I currently am. And then also that's one thing, right? So make an adjustment there. But then also, what can I do to enhance my skills, right? Take a look at different roles, maybe talk to people who have that position and ask them what kind of skills they use on a daily basis. Or even if you can, talk to a hiring manager, someone who has that type of position that reports to them, and ask them, what do you look for when you are reviewing candidate applications for this type of role? And look and see what gaps you may have within your own skill set or within your resume, and build. If you need to build the skill set, then go and do some courses on LinkedIn Learning, or go to YouTube University, or hire a coach, or do whatever it is that you need to do to enhance that skill or build that skill. And then make sure that you are adjusting your resume to really highlight those transferable skills that you have that would serve you in that role, right? So you're taking that habit of applying and reviewing a process. You have to have a process so that you can say, okay, well, I'm going to apply to X number of jobs, or I'm only going to apply to jobs that meet 80% of the criteria that I'm really looking for. So you need to have a process. And then if the process isn't working, what can you do to enhance it? How can I make some adjustments, make some tweaks to ensure that I get the results that I am after?
That's a good way. That's a high, that I like that. And to even stem on what I just heard, and let me know if this is resonating, if this is beneficial for you as well. Oftentimes, as what Tracetta just explained and described, if you're just kicking tires by just applying with no sort of roadmap, what is that goal? What does that process look like? I like to kind of even bring it down a lot more, and by creating it through imagination. Now, wait, stay here with me just a moment. When you hear imagination, oh Lord, what exactly is Ruth applying here when I'm hearing the word imagination? I'm glad you asked. Just putting yourself, first of all, who would you become? Who would you become in essence as applying to this role? Is the role even showing any kind of magnet to you spiritually, or even in your mindset? If it's not obsession to you, if you're just wanting to just pivot in your career, but somehow you don't find joy in it, then I would challenge you to step back and then form, because you can't, I believe, and this is my opinion, you cannot just set yourself up to create that desire. That desire automatically comes out the moment you discover that I'm really good at this, and this is what I'm going to pursue. You discover that, and then you align by connecting with other departments or other companies that are in need of that skill set. You with me? That's what I believe you would be your first priority. Let's create that imagination. Who would you become? How would you even collaborate with other peers within that organization? Would your style change? Would you be better at communication? Like Tracetta said, would you even extend and do some more learning, higher education? Take for example, LinkedIn Learning. Is this helpful? Is this making sense? And so what other ways do you believe, Tracetta, in what I just described in terms of imagination versus just kind of autopilot, not even autopilot, but more so just being a leaf in a windy, flowing fall season, just flowing in the air without no kind of roadmap?
So there's two things that I want to hit on or touch on that you mentioned, right? So you talked about the why behind you pursuing the thing. Like, is this something that really lights you up? Is this something that brings you joy? Do you get filled up? And I want to share with you just really quickly a story. When I first started my coaching practice, I did my very first event. It was a small training. There was about 12 people at this training that I did. I had someone help me to get it set up in Montgomery, Alabama. And I drove over, did this event, and I had them doing an exercise. So I was teaching, pause, had them doing an exercise, and I was just kind of floating around checking to see, if anyone needed any support or anything like that. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what I was born to do.
Yes. How did you feel when you knew that was the tipping over moment for you?
Absolutely amazing. And I was so high off of the thrill of doing what I know that I was put on this earth to do, which is to teach and to train. Oh my gosh, it brought me so much joy. So I have been chasing that high ever since. So everything that I do, I love doing things like what we're doing right now, because this is what I was created to do. And it comes out when I teach, because it fills me up to fill you up, right? So that's one. But we talked about this a little bit last week about imagination. We're talking about vision and the RAS, right? So when you imagine, when you envision the career, the job, the life, the relationship that you desire to have, when you sit and you close your eyes and imagine yourself living that life out or living that thing out, you are firing up what is called the reticular activating system of your brain, the RAS. And what the RAS does is it creates neural pathways. Now in order for us to learn things, in order for things to become habit, right? We've been talking about habits. We have to create new neural pathways because we're going somewhere we've never been before. Right. And so every time we envision something or we do something new, we start creating a new neural pathway.
I so love that. I want you to kind of park there even longer, because I often do believe that when you're wanting to see how do you marry what you just said when it comes to the RAS and then aligning it with your vision, knowing that, it plays a major role when it comes to your mind, which I do believe that's the majority of it, like at least 90% of it. If your mind is not aligned with what your logistic part is, your goals or your planning, which I believe is just 10% because you're just writing it, but the major part is your mindset. So kind of take your time on that and massage it a lot more, because that's juicy.
Okay. Listen, look, we're in my geek out area, so I'm totally fine parking here. So what happens when we imagine, when we do visualization exercises and really get clear, like start to see ourselves in the thing that we desire, our brain does not know the difference because we are now, I don't know how it all works. I'm not a neuroscience. I've done some research, and
Yeah.
by doing research, I mean reading articles and reading research that other people have done because I'm not a scientist. But there is truly a science behind it. And when we start, because if you think about it, whatever we do in the actual world, right, we see it enters through our eye gate and then our brain registers it. When you close your eyes and visualize, you are using your mind's eye as opposed to your natural eye, right?
I like that.
And your
Yeah.
brain still registers that image as if it were real. So you're still creating that neural pathway. Now, why is that important? Why is it important to create that neural pathway? Because it makes it easier, right? We talked last week about how sometimes you find yourself on autopilot and you are driving down the road and you're going in the direction of your job, but you're not going to your job, you're going somewhere else. And you find yourself, oh my gosh, I missed my turn, or why am I'm headed here? Like, no, that's not where I'm going. It's
no,
because,
I can relate for sure. No, you're on the right path. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And what's happened is you have solidified that neural pathway so well that you don't have to think about it. And that's why visualization exercises are so powerful, because if you can take time every single day to see yourself in the thing you desire, you are not only the first time you're creating the neural pathway, and each additional time is you are solidifying that neural pathway so that getting from where you are right now to where you desire to be becomes easy, because your brain automatically starts to go, I need to do these things. I need to do some things to get me from where I see it here, because my reality doesn't match.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
So, and then we talked about it. No, that does. And I love it there, because here's the truth. Oftentimes when we're kind of running through a sprint in our own game, in our own mindset, when it comes to building or forming that image, oftentimes you got to I like to just call it where I got to silence the noise in my head mentally. There's a lot of chaos at times. And oftentimes you just want to channel that noise and just quiet it all together. And I know that's hard for some folks, many folks. It can be hard for wanting to separate yourself and then just seclude it to where, how do I create these imaginations? Not only that, how do I then pause and allow the information to flow? The words and the witty ideas, maybe saying, hey, go, because sometimes you will hear a soft, whispery voice giving you instructions, because you now you're in your quiet, you're in your zone of obsession, because you're now tapping into what you want to create in your mind, but also project into your reality. But in order to do so, you got to silence what's mentally blocking, what it's called, maybe I like to call it, you know how you have an old house and you go into the attic, there's a lot of cobwebs that's hanging out around the crevices of the home. And it has really great bones and everything just need to be a nice little cleaning and grooming. That's what I see in our mindset. Our mind is just simply wanting to refine and groom and removing some of the cobwebs so you can now see what's been hidden. Do you not know that we don't even use the majority of our brain? And many of you all know that. But if you can just take an inkling and just take away, some of the things that been holding you back, like we were talking about earlier, certain habits. How do we then do it in bite size? How do we create activities that resonates with our obsession, even when we don't feel like doing it? Right? Yeah. How do we shift that? How do we shift to where, okay, I'm going to be intentional this time. I know I have a God-given purpose and a gift, and I want to be rewarded for it, instead of being frustrated, kicking, doing tire kicking dances because it's just not coming out here in the surface. Maybe going back in. Elaborate on that. How can one just really take full ownership of just taking the canvas, or taking ownership of the canvas and their paintbrush and recreating that, redesigning that?
I think the true key here is to prioritize. I feel like we, in this day and age, because of all of the things that are constantly coming at us, we're so much more easily distracted.
That's true.
That's how we end up, so we've got all this noise going on in our brain. And it's easy to let the next shiny object grab our attention. We're on this path, and then, ooh, this over here looks more exciting, so I'm going to go over here. Then, ooh, this looks more exciting, so I'm going to go over. And we're constantly moving back and forth between things, and which is why we're not able to really have the success or accomplish some of the things that we want, because we're constantly being pulled in other directions. And so if you can go through the process of really establishing, what are my priorities? And I'm not going to get into it today because we don't really have time to do a deep dive into that whole thing, but priorities is not really a word. That's something that we created. We made up, but it's really singular. There can only be one priority. But that's a conversation for another day. But you have to really just determine, what are my priorities? What are the things that are most important? And I typically recommend to my clients no more than 2 or 3, because what happens when if your focus, what else do we call focus? Concentration, right? Concentration. So your mind, when you are focused, is concentrated. Now, if you think about something that is in concentrate form, it is in its most powerful form, correct? Right? It's concentrated. It's highly powerful because it is concentrated. But what happens, so if you think about that a single priority is concentrated. When you add a second priority, it has been diluted by 50%. When you add a third priority, it has been diluted by another 33.33333%.
Right, because now you're splitting all of your focus and concentration in so many different forms and directions, right? So that's why they always say, if you want to be a master, be a master of one thing first. Once you master and execute that, then you can, peel the pillar back and go to the next level or the next focus point on your roadmap. That's what I'm hearing. That's good. Yeah. That's real good.
Yes, exactly. So think about if you had a cup of coffee and you diluted it with, you took the coffee and you diluted it in half with, half water and then half your concentrated coffee. It's going to be, you might be able to still drink. You're like, oh, it still tastes like coffee. It's not bad, whatever. But imagine continuing to add another equal part of water to that. The more water you add to that cup of coffee, eventually it's not going to taste like coffee anymore. It's going to be very watered down, and you're not going to want it because it's like, oh my gosh, it's so diluted that it is ineffective.
So that's a number one mistake right there. By giving yourself all of these priorities to jungle through, and you see it progressing, but maybe not in the speed that you're wanting that to perform in. And you're wondering why. Why is it doing the way it's doing? So now you have to ask yourself, what is priority? Which one should I take on first and give it my full heart? So in other words, if you have maybe 3 roles that you're looking to pursue, or maybe more than that, 3+ roles, why? First, you want to ask yourself, which one is more top priority to you? Which one yields to you the most? Which one you're absolutely obsessed with? Are you truly obsessed with all 3 roles or all 3 companies? And if so, just focus on one, and focus on one in terms of the role that is, because you can still translate it to whatever companies that you're looking to land that opportunity with, that ideal company. But focus on targeting 1 to 2. I agree on that. So that way you're not watering it down. I love the way you said that, Trisetta. And then the second mistake, when it comes to having to form that vision, or just really creating that new neural path inside of your mindset, is, are you quit not being consistent? Anything that you're doing, you got to be consistent with. Or ask yourself, am I being consistent with it before I start, catching a huge anxiety or having my emotions not regulated because I've now decided to go this way and then stopped, and then waited another week or 2 and then went back into the ring of it, and then stop. You have to give that power of consistency and opportunity to just, even when you don't feel like doing it. Am I right?
Yes. And I have a secret hack to help you be consistent. And I'm not gonna charge y'all for this. I'm just gonna give y'all my little trick.
Give it to them and me.
But you know what the trick is?
Yeah.
Track it. To track it, because our mind, listen, how many times, okay, for those of you who have kids, I know you can really relate to this particular example. How many times have you run into someone that you haven't seen in a while and you don't think, you're like, oh, it's been a while, but you don't think it's been, maybe you think it's been 2 or 3 years. And you're like, oh my gosh, when was the last time we saw each other? And you start thinking, you're like, oh my gosh, little so-and-so was 6 years old and so-and-so is 19 now.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And we're like, and our mind, like, has it really been, what's the math, 13 years?
Right. Right.
It's, we don't have time conceptually in our mind is not the best, right? So you think, oh, it's only been a couple days since I last did X, but it's actually been a couple weeks, right?
Exactly.
So track it, find some sort of, keep it simple. Like I'm a spreadsheet gal.
That's a huge mistake. A lot of people they're so frustrated. Why am I not meeting this goal? Why am I not meeting? I love the fact that eliminating that mistake of not being able to track. And you're mentioning a tool for an example. That way you can visually see it. Go ahead and elaborate more on that.
So I'm a spreadsheet person. So I'll create like a little spreadsheet and I'll track that way. Because I like to geek out over that. But the simplest
not only that, but seeing it, right? Seeing it on your face and seeing the measure of it, it does something to you. Now provokes you have ways. Well, what do I need to do to improve? How do I need to connect? Maybe I need to add more resources. Maybe I need to get some support. Because clearly there's a gap. If you have a lot of reds, or if you're like a color person while you're tracking, and maybe certain things are red, orange, or yellow, or green, then you want to ask yourself, why do I have a lot more red this time? Because now you're able to see it, right? In terms of just running through the races.
So I'm going to share just a few tools that you can, obviously you can do a spreadsheet, but you don't have to. That's just, me. Like I said, I like to geek out over that. The simplest tool that you can use to track your activity is to have a paper calendar on your wall or on your fridge or, on your mirror, wherever. Have a paper calendar up and literally mark an X for each day that you do whatever the action is. If it's something that you're doing on a daily basis. So if it's something you're doing on a weekly basis, maybe every Monday you apply for 3 jobs, or every Monday you do 30 minutes of training, whatever it is, make sure that you identify, what am I doing? How often am I doing it? And for how long, depending upon what it is, it may be for how long. And just put an X on the calendar each time you actually do the thing, because numbers don't lie.
They don't.
When you go back and look and say, I'm not getting the results I really desire, you can go back and look at that, whatever tool you're using to track, and say, did I do the actions? Did I do the activities that I said I was going to do? And you look and say, you know what? This week you did it twice. You're supposed to do it 5 times a week. This week you did it twice. The next week you did it 3 times. The next week you did it once.
Yes.
The next time you went 4 times. Next time you did 5 times. Like you weren't consistent. So you can't expect to get the results you desire if you're not consistent in the action. And like I said, numbers don't lie, but we will lie to ourselves if we don't have the evidence that says otherwise. So you could use, like I said, you could use a calendar, you could use a spreadsheet for, like, if you're someone who has to do like a certain number of things, like maybe you have to make sales calls, you can have paper clips. If you got to make 10 sales calls today, then have 10 paper clips start on one, on your desk in the morning. And each time you make a sales call, the paper clip goes back into the paper clip cup holder, right? until you don't stop until the paper clips are all in their rightful place. Whatever.
I like that type of activity. Yeah.
Tactical, tactical and practical that you can do to ensure that you are keeping up with the level of activity that you need to have in order for you to be successful and to get the results that you are after.
This was good. So these are all 3 mistakes that you can then turn over, because again, the brain does not know the difference between hot and cold, or, any season. This is the perfect opportunity to then create that new neural path in your day-to-day activities. We mentioned number 1, how to form new habits and stemming it over to your imagination, your vision, how to definitely be in alignment with it, be obsessed with what exactly you're looking to do, pursuing that goal. And then once you write that goal, how do you measure it? How do you track it? By doing a tracking. So if you're not tracking, how are you going to know that you've even finished that race, or need to go back and maybe do some more improvement, or perhaps add some resources, maybe saying, you know what, I may need to get some support on this because I'm struggling in this area, because now you're able to see it. You can't see something and work and then decide to make, improvements on it if you're not able to see it. So this was absolutely amazing. Definitely look out for next Friday. This is our weekly on breaking boundaries, ways that you can definitely up level and go higher with myself, Ruth, Mac, and Trissetta. Thank you all for joining. If this was super resonating with you, do not take this lightly, and we do appreciate you sharing the love. Go ahead and share it, and if you're not followed by any of one of us, definitely connect. Our goal is to definitely share more of these valuable, and if you have other things that you may love for us to discuss, go ahead and shoot us a message, or maybe add it into the comments below. In the meantime, have an amazing day. Talk to you all soon.
Bye for now.